Everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am very, very pleased to be able to host this official Senate Committee on Indian Affairs Roundtable here in Anchorage, Alaska. As the chairman of the Senate Indian Affairs Committee, we do most of our hearings, most of our roundtables back in Washington, D.C., but there is no substitute for the committee actually being not only here in Alaska, but in other parts of the country to hear concerns and issues from Alaska natives, Native Americans, Native Hawaiians. This is part of our job and our responsibility. So today we are creating a record for the committee. This is our first event on the draft legislative package that we have pulled together in response to the Native Children's Commission's report entitled The Way Forward. And what an appropriate and apt name. That draft legislation is up on our committee's website. And I want to start by sharing my appreciation and my thanks for the input that we have received, the contributions that we have received from so many already to get us to this point. And so today's purpose with this roundtable is to have a discussion that helps us build on the work, helps us mold this legislative package into a final form for introduction into the United States Senate. So I want to make sure that people understand what you have, what I have in a pretty big format here is our draft proposal. And I think it's important that you understand that it is still very much a living document. My team has done extraordinary work following off the extraordinary efforts of the commission. But our collective work is made that much better. We can improve upon what we think is a pretty good product with the input of so many in this room. At this moment, I want to acknowledge Angeline Waske from the native village of Eklutna, a tribal council member, to provide us with a land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. Good afternoon, everyone. Chinan Guninu, I said thank you, came here in my Dena'ina language. My name is Angeline Waske. I'm a trustee for the native village of Eklutna and Eklutna Inc. shareholder. As I grew up, I watched my grandparents, aunts, and uncles govern the tribe and corporations to make our future come to light. And for more than 20 years, I've had the privilege to do the same as a council member. It takes time, and I'm still learning, just as I'm trying to speak to you all today. I pray you will reflect on the issues facing Alaska Natives face every day. The people of Eklutna are reminded of these issues as we look across our lands and waters. For instance, a former military site was located by our village, which has contaminated the land and water for generations. The Eklutna River, and consequently our subsistence resources, has been closed off for hundreds of years. Land entitlement remains unresolved and yet to be conveyed as promised through AKST and North Anchorage Land Agreement. We need resolutions on these issues and plead for your assistance in restoring our land and waters while honoring the promises and commitments of AKST. With that being said, I am pleased to welcome the United States Senate Committee of Indian Affairs to our ancestral lands of the Dena'ina people. Please enjoy the summer days and good fishing. Chinan.
Chinan, thank you, Angeline. I'm often asked about some of the most consequential things that I may or may not have accomplished as a United States Senator. What can you point to in terms of success? Most important thing I've ever done was raise 2 healthy boys into men. My role as a mom is more significant than any legislative accomplishment that I will ever do. And I think those of us who have been blessed with children realize that blessing, that responsibility, and feel the same, that the well-being of our children is personal to each of us, but we all share the same desire that every child has the chance to grow up safe, healthy, and supported. But we know, unfortunately, that far too often our Native children face disparities, and they're disparities that are unacceptable, whether it is in healthcare, whether it's education, child welfare, or opportunity. And these aren't statistics. We talk a lot about statistics, but we know they are real lives, they are real families, they're real futures. And I take very seriously the responsibility that we have, not just as policymakers, but as people, as humans, as parents. We have a responsibility to address that. If we want a strong future for our state and for our country, we must invest in and uplift the next generation of Native leaders. It's their strength, their resilience, and their potential. They're so incredible, and they deserve nothing less than our full commitment. So, give a little background. Some of you know this very well. Certainly, my friend Gloria O'Neill does, but the work that we are discussing today began over 10 years ago. My friend from North Dakota, Senator Heidi Heitkamp, we shared conversations. She from those in her home state of North Dakota, me from my state of Alaska. But we shared stories about the things that we had heard and seen firsthand, the struggles that Native children and their families were facing. But it was hard because there was a lot of anecdote, there was a lot of shared empathy here, but what we lacked was hard data. Data or the solutions to implement and ensure that Native children thrive. So we kind of linked arms, partnered together. We worked to introduce legislation to create the Alyce Spotted Bear and Walter Soboleff Commission on Native Children. And in 2016, our bill was enacted into law. It enjoyed unanimous support in both the House and the Senate. And I think that's worthy to take note of. Look at what's going on in the Congress today. First of all, there's not as much bipartisan legislation passing the Congress as needs to. But when you think about it being bipartisan and actually passing both bodies of the Congress unanimously, it speaks about this support for the work here. So that passes and really made way for the work of the commission, which Gloria will speak to in just a moment. But I knew who I wanted to not only serve on that commission, but to head up that commission. And thankfully, Gloria stepped forward to take that on, but to not just do the work, but to embrace it with a heart and a passion that we felt over the years. In February of 2024, the Commission released its final report. Again, it's entitled The Way Forward, which included the recommendations for congressional action. And once that was out and we had this conversation, we both said from the beginning, I want Gloria to do this. Gloria says, I'm willing to do the work, but we have to have an implementation plan afterwards. Nobody's interested in yet one more commissioned report that people are going to have a nice press release when it is announced, and then they leave it on the shelf. So I directed my team to immediately begin working with those on the commission, so many of you, Native leaders and advocates across the country, to create a comprehensive legislative package aimed at addressing the commission's findings and the recommendations to really improve the lives of Native youth in the areas of child welfare, justice, physical and behavioral health, environmental health, nutrition, housing, homelessness, education, childcare, and expanding the reach of research and data capacity. So when you think about the holistic approach that we are taking, this is not trying to figure out how we deal with housing in isolation without understanding how housing impacts the education and housing impacts the healthcare and housing impacts the trauma that may be surrounding a child when you're living in overcrowded situations that cause stress within families. It is all interrelated. And so when we try to isolate it and say we're going to do a bill here to help this and a bill there to help that, maybe we hit a few pieces that knit together. But that's not what we're intending to do as an outcome of this commission. We're not going to let this report sit on a shelf somewhere. And so with this roundtable today, it's really only the beginning for this legislative package. As I mentioned, we're accepting public input through comments for an additional 4 weeks. We're then going to take the full fall to review the input, work on text, talk with other senators and their teams, hold additional hearings, additional roundtables on the topics before we introduce that to move it through the process. So all of you here today to participate here on the panel, those of you in the audience and those that will be joining online, know that we need your input. We need it not just today, but we're going to need it going forward because we're going to get ideas. We're going to hear some things that we want to build on. In order for the legislation to be effective, in order for it to gain that level of support that the initial commission did, it's going to have to be worked through well with input from all sides. It has to reflect the lived experiences, the knowledge, and the priorities of Indigenous communities. So I'm going to briefly introduce all the leaders that we have invited to the panel today. You have more information about their work and their organizations in the participant biographies that are available online and on our committee's website. But beginning here to my left, we have Ben Malott, a dear friend. Ben and I were just in Bethel and Napakiak with the Secretary of Housing. Ben, of course, is the president of Alaska Federation of Natives. Next to Ben is Chief Brian Ridley, Chief and Chairman of Tanana Chiefs Conference. Chief Ridley had the honor of being able to welcome the Secretary of Health and Human Services last week and to make sure that he understands fully the role that his department plays on matters that are so important to Native children. Dan Bredeen is the president and the CEO of the Bristol Bay Native Association. And Dan, I just want to thank you in advance. Your testimony that you submitted to the committee, you can't do all that in 5 minutes, but boy, you gave us a lot to put on the table. So I really appreciate the background there. Vivian Corthius was also with us yesterday in Bethel with Secretary Turner. Vivian is not only my long-term friend, I think you are my advisor and counselor in so many matters, and I appreciate that a great deal. Vivian is a CEO of the Association for Village Council Presidents, AVCP. Natasha Singh was also with the Secretary of Health and Social Services last week. Natasha is doing an extraordinary job as President and CEO of Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium. We have Gloria O'Neill, of course, who needs no introduction, but again, I can't say enough about your leadership, not only on the commission, but as president and CEO of CITC, and again, one whose friendship I treasure greatly. So thank you, Gloria. And just off the plane with me, because she was seated next to Secretary Turner on the flight out of Bethel this morning, and was with us yesterday throughout the day, Jackie Pata. And Jackie has been an incredible voice on matters related to housing, but so much more. She is the first vice president of Central Council of Tlingit Haida Indian Tribes of Alaska, and a serious advocate on all matters related to Native peoples. And when we were in Bethel, she was promoting all the time the work of the Children's Commission. So you'd be proud of that. Next to Jackie is April Kyle, who is the president and CEO of South Central Foundation. You also have had a busy week with the dignitaries that have come through, so thank you for that. Dr. Tina Woods is with us as the Chief Clinical Officer at Cook Inlet Tribal Council, and is a very impressive voice when it comes to mental health well-being of Native children. So thank you for your contributions today. Ms. Patuk Glenn is the Executive Director of the Arctic Slope Community Foundation, and I look to her as one of the influencers in throughout the Alaska Native community, and regard your voice so highly. And the final panelist is my friend Tammy Giroux. Tammy is the Executive Director of the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center, but Tammy is a warrior. And Tammy has been a leader through many legislative efforts, certainly most notably as we were reauthorizing VAWA, but at so many different levels. Your voice is so respected and your advocacy so strong. So thank you. And as I mentioned, my friend Gloria, as the, I guess you're the former co-chair now, because the work has been done, but the work is just beginning. The work is just beginning. But in addition to taking on the co-chair of the Native Children's Commission, Gloria is the president and CEO of Cook Inlet Tribal. She's a lifelong Alaskan. She also serves as a CEO for Alaska Native Justice Center, the Claire Swan Early Head Start Center, and of the Get Out the Native Vote. So, Gloria, I'm now going to hand it over to you for your comments, and then we will get into our discussion.
Thank you, Senator. So we spent 6 years on the road across the United States getting input from Native communities. And I remember the day I got the report. It was hot off the press. Josh will remember this. I took it into the senator's office and I said, okay, here it is after 6 years, right? And she grabs my arm and she goes, Gloria, don't you realize that this was our agreement? The work is just beginning, right? So the work, as the senator said, is just beginning. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to Senator Murkowski. It is so wonderful for us to have a leader who cares so deeply about our community, but cares so deeply about our kids. The passion that I've witnessed from Senator Murkowski and also from Senator Heidi Heitkamp is really amazing. I have to share a quick story. We were in DC, and this is a long commission, and because of the jurisdictional issues of the commission, meaning that it takes the entire federal government into account, Department of Justice, it was the first of its kind, the way it was organized, was having a problem with trying to figure out how to fund it. And Senator Murkowski and Senator Heidi Heitkamp, they called a meeting and they asked me to be at the meeting. And I said, okay. So I go in there and I'm just like, wow, I get to be around two amazing leaders. And we were waiting for the Department of Justice folks, you know, all lawyers. And, there was someone said, I wonder where they are. And then I saw this group of all of these suits, like literally, it was 20 suits moving in formation. And I said, I think they're here. And we get into the meeting, and I remember this so clearly. Senator Heidkamp said, okay, now who's up in my grill? What is the issue? Why isn't this funded? And what I loved about that is that the passion, just kind of the drive to move this forward, but just to do it from a place of human being, as you started out your comments, that this is all about us really ensuring that our communities are safe, that the investments that the federal partners are making are really solid for our kids. And I felt that from the beginning of this work. So just to talk a little bit about process, is that we were really focused on conducting a comprehensive study of all the programs, grants, and supports available to all American Indians, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian children from birth through age 24. So that was a huge charge. And to make recommendations about how the overall system could be strengthened, improved, and where needed, transformed to better help Native children and youth thrive. I think that's the key word, is thrive. So we had an 11-member commission. These commission members were experts in education, juvenile justice, child welfare, social services, and mental and physical health. And it was really important, as the chair, that we had a solid process that we established that was grounded in Native values. So before the Department of Justice figured out their process to fund us, we worked with the Casey Family Program Foundation in Seattle, and we established that process. We thought that that was really important, that as we went out to the communities, that we started with a recognition in the communities, that we had ceremony, that we really came from a place of heart and respect. From that, we conducted 25 virtual hearings. And now remember, this was during COVID, so we had to pivot really quickly. We went to virtual hearings and also 26 site visits to urban, rural, and reservation-based programs serving our children. And I have to say that it transformed my life and work from hearing from our communities. We heard from researchers. I mean, we have so many intelligent national researchers out there that really understand what works in our communities, from our Indigenous knowledge-based systems and approach, listening to families, listening to elders, tribal leaders, but most importantly, we listen to our kids. And I remember when we submitted the report back to Senator Murkowski, and she said, okay, Gloria, what's the bottom line? And I said, the bottom line is this: our kids are resilient and they are so smart when they're supported and they're grounded in who they are. I think what we heard is that the support and the partnership with the federal government is extremely important. But what we want is flexibility, because culture has to be at the core of everything we do. It is our medicine for our kids. Our kids, when they grow up and they know who they are and where they come from, they're so strong and solid. So we had 29 different recommendations that we submitted from hearing from the communities. And it was really basically that is just, how do we strengthen the systems that we have in place? And so 5 key themes that came out of this was, again, cultural engagement. Language is critical. And we also know that culture is the core of healing and resilience for our children. Uh, Community control and community level decision making. It is so important. We heard time and time again how flexibility with the community knows what they need to do, and they really understand what the solutions are. So if we could develop flexible funding while still maintaining accountability, that is so very important because it really allows us to innovate and be responsive to our evolving communities. We heard a lot of really difficult stories. There were intense stories around trauma. We have to acknowledge historical trauma. It plays out in our communities. And how do we really respond to that in the community to support our kids? And getting to the root causes of that. And that, we all come together as community leaders to understand a comprehensive service delivery approach, because it is really important to have, this is on the data side, the understanding of who qualifies as a Native child. You think about it, right? Where are we today with that question? I think we all probably have different answers. Where are we going to be in 20 years? Because it's about generative leadership. This is about how we continue to evolve in our communities and stay strong. So with that, I just really appreciate the work and as it stands today, and I look forward to us all rolling up our sleeves together and being a part of it. And just, I'd like to shout out, because I'm looking at Joshua Franks, so many people help with this process. Josh worked side by side with us on this, and I really appreciate your support, your leadership, Josh. In addition to that, we also had the support of many of our federal partners with us in this work. And Lisa Rigger isn't in the room, but I have to just call out, I think she's having fun somewhere in the world, on a cruise or something, probably dancing, I don't know. But she's so passionate to this, and we really appreciate all the support. So thank you for being here today.
Gloria, thank you. We're about 1:30. We've got the room until 3, so an hour and a half to really get into some of the discussion. And as you have heard, this report covers a wide range of very interconnected issues that are reflected in the many sections of the draft legislation that we're going to be talking about. So the way we've structured it, and when I say we, it is these incredibly smart women right behind me, who I am going to take a moment to give a shout out to. This is my SKIA team, my Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, led by Amber Ebarb as my committee staff director. Sarah has been extraordinary on the committee in helping us put together this program. Katie is with the National Public Health Service Corps and has been on detail to us for a year and a half. And next to her is Cassidy Hobbs. Cassidy is in the personal office with me, working all of my healthcare matters. And another one of their ringleaders is Anna Dietrich Powers. And Anna is one of our great Alaskans, and married a nice fellow from the East Coast, and she is expecting a baby any moment, and we didn't want to try out the YKHC facility in Bethel because her husband was a little nervous about that. So Anna was not allowed to come on the trip, but she also has been a great help in not only helping craft the draft proposal, but working with the team. So I have an extraordinary group of people on the committee. What we have worked out today is a prompt that I am going to be giving to those who've been invited to speak to the panel. so that we can try to get as many of these section areas covered as we can. And I'm going to ask you to keep your responses to 5 minutes or so that we can get through as many of these as we can. But know that I'm not keeping a clock and they're behind me so I can't see. So when you see them saying like, cut it off, that'll be your cue that maybe we need to move on to the next. But more important than timelines is the opportunity to have your input here into this important conversation, because again, we're creating a record for the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs. So I want to start off with the issue of behavioral health, and you have moments in your life, you have moments in your professional time where that moment of feeling something is so, it hits you so directly, you don't lose it. And one of those moments was in 2013 at the AFN convention. There was a group of young people from Tanana, and they were maybe middle school students, maybe a couple high schoolers, some that were probably not even in middle school. And they took the stage in front. I get goosebumps just thinking about it. And I'm seeing some head nods here because you remember that. Those kids stood there and they shared their experience with violence, with substance abuse, with suicide in their community. And they called on the grown-ups in the room to help them, to protect them. Now, if that isn't a call to action, when your children are pleading on your community to pull it together for the good of them. But I recall that so clearly. And so when we think about the impact on young people, when they have this kind of trauma in their lives early on and do not know where to go, how to make that call for help. But I'm going to turn first to Dr. Woods, because you've certainly inspired my team, me, with your leadership as you have advanced behavioral health throughout Alaska, always with a focus on wellness for the whole family. You've done it at Tlingit Haida, now at CITC. You've been instrumental in creating Tlingit Haida's Behavioral Health Healing Center, which is a great model for the full wraparound services, the holistic care. So Title IV of our draft legislation really builds so much on your work. It proposes dedicated set-asides for tribes within behavioral health funding streams. It establishes self-governance demonstration program, but it gives tribes greater flexibility and opportunity to deliver on these critical services. So can you just share with those gathered here and online how might this approach strengthen capacity to deliver holistic behavioral health services and the importance of that?
Thank you, Senator Murkowski. I want to start off by saying I have so much gratitude for having a voice at the table because it's for our people. And the journey in this field, everything that I have to share today has to do with something you shared about raising two fine young men. When I think about this work, I think I got chills listening to you say that, because it's all about breaking the cycle and to really interrupt the intergenerational trauma. And so I'm going to give you some of my comments on this. So this Section 408, this approach would allow tribes to design and implement culturally responsive behavioral health services without the same excessive regulatory expectations defined by a linear step-by-step process for the billing space, which can create barriers. This would not remove the importance of high standards, certifications, competencies, and proper training, but it would reduce the regulatory expectations found in a billable space by allowing more flexibility for providers to pivot as needed without prior authorizations or punitive regulations around documentation standards for billing. Using this approach would promote self-governance for tribes to build and integrate behavioral health and social services fully, leveraging the whole system, maximizing resources to meet the complex needs of our people with a no wrong door approach. Many times when our clients come to us, they come to us in crisis, and it's due to an immediate need for social services, which should take priority over therapy or counseling, and even referrals to groups like anger management or parenting classes. Tribes often already provide social services ranging across the board around food security, financial assistance, training, and education, access to housing, childcare, all the things, including outreach and prevention of suicide, substance use, child abuse, and neglect. So this makes tribes significantly designed, so they have strategy to wrap around services in a holistic manner. And that's a key word, a holistic manner, that can naturally lead to deeper transformative healing opportunities with in-house behavioral health supports, which these funds would help build. Also worth noting, the current regulatory framework paired with emotional labor, vicarious trauma tends to burn out our clinical staff, making it difficult to recruit and sustain a healthy workforce. Typically, when people get into this field of behavioral health, they get into it, or even working with children in need, they get into it because of their own lived experience or what they've witnessed. So we want our providers to choose this field, but also to remain healthy for those that they're caring for. For Alaska Native American Indian people, trust is more easily established when you observe that your care is culturally grounded. Lastly, Senator Murkowski, we know that trauma can negatively affect the development of our children biologically, psychologically, socially. And this opportunity offers hope towards transformational healing, addressing the cumulative pain around grief and loss in our communities due to the extensive history of trauma and complex trauma impacting whole communities, which continues intergenerationally, compacting the soul wounds of our people and innocent children, hence the reason for our discussion today. We know that untreated trauma can impose long-lasting effects on a human being. So when I think of those little people, I also imagine what they're going to be like when they become adults. And I imagine what they're going to be like if they have not dealt with their trauma, how it's going to impact them in interpersonal effectiveness, how it's going to impact them as parents, how it's going to impact them as they pursue education. So this proposal can have a profound impact on how we create culturally responsive healing spaces embedded in our Native traditions as medicine for our children, families, and communities. It would allow us to create spaces for healing whole families while providing our children with a connection to their culture, their community, and ultimately leading to a sense of belonging. And Senator Murkowski, I will just end with saying that the focus, when we think of our children and providing care to our children, those children go home to their homes, they go home to their families, they go home to their communities. And so when let's take children who might leave their village for treatment, they go back to the same community. So I really believe in holistic healing. I believe in healing families, because if you only heal parts of people, the effects are what we see today. So I just have so much gratitude for being able to speak to that.
Thank you. Thank you. It is really important, the last point that you made there, that just trying to heal up the individual. But if the individual, whether it is a child or I'm looking at Tammy there in the role that you play, we know that if you're a victim of domestic violence, and you can be safe for a period of time because we have provided that level of safety. But if you go back to that same environment because you have no other place to go, then we've offered you a bit of a respite, but we haven't we haven't made you safe. And it kind of turns the conversation then to another one of the challenges that we face in this state, and one that we heard a lot about the past day and a half with the Secretary of Housing, and that is the issue of housing affordability and access, which exacerbates the challenges like homelessness and overcrowding. So I introduced Jackie in her role at Tlingit Haida, but Jackie also helped lead the first tribal continuum of care program in Alaska, really showing what's possible when tribes take the lead in addressing homelessness. And then Tammy, I mentioned your work at the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center. You've seen firsthand for years the very deep connection between gender-based violence and houselessness. And yet still, here we are in 2025, tribal communities have very few resources or very limited resources to address the issues beyond like Nahasda, which primarily supports traditional housing through construction and rehabilitation, but not necessarily the critical services like emergency shelter, like case management or transitional housing. So I'm going to ask you to respond to this first, Jackie, and then we'll turn to you, Tammy. Title VII of our proposed legislation aims to strengthen tribal self-determination in addressing homelessness by establishing a housing voucher program. We're proposing to model this after the tribal VASH and providing seed funding for tribes to develop their own continuum of care supportive housing programs. So can you speak to these pilot proposals and what you feel they can mean to the populations that you serve, both on the homelessness side and then on the victims of domestic violence?
Thank you. Before COVID happened, our community in Juneau got together and they said, what's the biggest gap in serving homelessness? And we realized we had no services for our youth. And then COVID hit and our homeless youth numbers started to really escalate. And I don't even want to repeat the places that our homeless youth had to find a couch or a place to stay, many, many times not in very safe places and many places where they shouldn't have been. And so we, with the support of our community, Tlingit and Haida applied for and became the first tribal COC in the nation. And the Alaska Coalition of Homelessness over on our teleconferences that we have were very supportive as they helped us piece together all the pieces. So I would have to say the homeless coalitions in Alaska are solid and they work together, and that works for us. But what didn't work was once again, allowing tribes to be an and tribes to a NOFO didn't necessarily fit our requirements. And so it didn't recognize our governance structures. We had to ask for exemptions and the list goes on. But mostly it didn't have the funding support. And so we were having to have to pull funds from somebody else's former program in order to fund this youth homeless effort that we were doing. And that's what I like about what's being proposed here in the bill. Couple of things. I like the fact that it's a pilot in Alaska. I think Alaska is the best place for pilots. Second thing, what I really like about it is it has the flexibility so that we can actually design the programs that meet our communities. We were just in Bethel and we saw a variety of communities dealing with a variety of different of their services for different marketed different people. And that's what we have to do. We have to, in our own communities, make those decisions about what are we serving and how are we serving them and how do we partner. For us, tying the counseling services in is critical. The VASH program works because the veteran who is already dealing with a number of other issues, they're homeless for a reason. They get those services and they get someone to listen and someone to be their advocate. And, I told a story about a veteran we had. His wife died. He was living in a camper trailer that was not habitable at all, but he wouldn't leave. literally would not leave the trailer and he was going to die for lack of food. But it was that counselor services that actually helped him get to that next step, and we could actually house him. And so that's really critical. And when we look at our homeless population, counseling services is so much a part of that. And Dr. Tina was our partner. She helped us with the youth Shai Khat Hit, our youth homeless shelter. That uses a little bit of our Nahasda money. We don't have enough to create the solutions, but it was a little bit that actually was what we could partner, and then with other layering, with the other grants, we were able to provide not only the youth homeless shelter for those that are 10 to 18, but we have a rapid rehousing program and others, but they're all tied to counseling services, which we think really makes big differences. And, when we did a survey in our region, just because we wanted to know, like, everybody says homeless in our villages is invisible. But we don't feel like it's visible. It visits us every night in our homes and lays on our couches. So we counted nights in our last survey, and we had 95,000 nights of our survey responders who said they housed someone who wasn't part of their household that was considered without housing in their homes. We have to find different solutions for particularly our homeless youth who couch surf, who we don't know where they are from one moment to another. We need to be able to have services that actually provide that family some kind of support, whether it's a meal voucher or what. And these programs with the flexibility can be designed for that. So that's, I think it's really important when we think about our youth and our families, is that we're restoring their dignity, their stability, and they're reconnecting with their communities and their support services. And I really appreciate this bill. And thank you so much for taking on the effort.
Tammy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a wonderful program. It sounds like that you've been able to develop. I think that people also believe that homelessness and domestic violence are not connected, or that there's no relationship between Alaska Native women who are experiencing homelessness and those who have experienced domestic violence. But the fact is we cannot ignore the intersectionality that is happening between domestic violence and homelessness. And studies that show as much as 57% of all homeless women reported domestic violence as the immediate cause of their homelessness. And for far too long, Alaska Native survivors are forced to choose between staying in dangerous situations or facing homelessness, and also between their safety and providing safety for their children. I think that we have to, we're really pleased about this draft legislation, and because I think it does address several of the critical intersections of survivor safety, basic human needs. I mean, Alaska Native and American Indian women and our communities that acknowledge the effective survivor services must address the full spectrum. And the full spectrum of the rights that enable women to leave violent relationships and build stable and independent lives. And that's really the key in all of this. And I think that that's also the key when we talk about our youth and our children, because that stable environment is also what is breaking cycles. In particular with Section 701 and 702 that include addressing one of the most dangerous barriers that survivors face, and that's lack of safe, stable housing. And I think that recently the Alaska Native Women's Resource Center conducted a statewide Alaska Safe Housing Assessment. We identified what we've known for years, that everyone has a fundamental right to live free from violence, food security, access to healthcare, housing, and meaningful employment. And yet Alaska Native survivors are consistently denied these basic rights due to our state's housing crisis. The pilot programs outlined in Section 701 and 702 directly address findings from our assessment. We documented that the Alaska housing crisis is worse than anywhere else in the United States, with overcrowding 4 times the national average. And in rural Alaska, 44% of the households are severely overcrowded. For survivors of domestic violence, this means staying in dangerous situations because there is simply nowhere safe to go. I often say this, whether we're talking about housing or other services for survivors, and that is the first safety plan we need is a safe place to be, whether it's short-term, long-term, or in between. And if we don't create those safe places that we have that with support, it's not going to be a successful model at all. What makes the pilot program, I think, potentially transformative and significant is the recognition that Alaska Native survivors need more than crisis intervention. Long term, we do need the crisis intervention, but we need more. And part of that is intersects with every other conversation that's going to happen today. Because oftentimes when we're talking about survivors, we're also talking about their children. So I think that it's really important that the tribal homeless assistance programs modeled after the tribal FASH acknowledge that survivors fleeing violence or experiencing a form of homelessness needs that are, we need to create specialized support and services. And this approach understands that survivors' path to safety is often depends on our ability to meet their family's basic needs. It's usually always about basic needs. And unfortunately, many of our relatives are not getting their basic need met in various ways, as has been demonstrated already. The continuum of care builds programs is, I think, a really important consideration when we come to address our current housing crisis by providing funding for construction, acquisition, and rehabilitation of permanent supportive housing. We desperately need this in Alaska, where emergency housing is limited and often inaccessible, and long-term housing is scarcer with insufficient stock and high cost. I think 75% set aside for projects that benefit Indian tribes recognize the unique challenges Alaska Native communities face. Our research has showed that safety resources vary significantly between villages, hub communities, cities, and any of what we consider urban areas, because we have more established services in those areas, but it's even hard to access those services here in Anchorage for survivors, whether you're coming in from the village or you're coming in from just living here in Anchorage, in terms of just basic safety and a lot of times just a place to stay. I think Title VII's emphasis on tribal self-determination is particularly important. Rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all solution, the program needs to allow the Alaska Native community to design the housing approaches that reflect their values and meet the specific needs. And this could mean developing housing that supports extended family systems, incorporates traditional healing practices, or addresses the seasonal challenges that we're finding with housing availability in rural Alaska. Amazingly enough, it's really hard to find housing in rural Alaska in the summertime in many of our communities. For Alaska tribes and survivors, the programs represent hope. And I think that's also one of the areas that we have to deal with behavioral health, housing, all of the services, as it creates a bit of hope. It's got safety, cultural identity, being able to leave an abusive relationship if that's what someone wants to do, but have the opportunity and the ability to do so in a safe and not being afraid that you're going to lose a home or lose a place for your children to sleep at night, because those choices are really hard to have to make those decisions around. I think finally, I would say that the representing federal, the federal recognition that Alaska Native and American Indian communities, we require some specialized approaches to address homelessness and housing instability. That's a given. And that's a fact. And I think this bill is actually really exciting in that arena. So I appreciate the opportunity to get on my soapbox a little. Thank you.
You got an important one there. Several of you have mentioned the importance of expanding tribal self-determination and how an effort to streamline services and better meet communities' needs comes about as a result of that. Title VI of the nutrition title of this draft offers, I think, an exciting opportunity to do just that. I don't need to tell anybody in this room about the challenges that the state of Alaska has experienced in administering SNAP. It's legendary. It makes the front page of the paper far too often, but more than being in the news, it is impacting families in a very, very negative way, facing many to really make oftentimes impossible choices between whether you're buying groceries, whether you're heating your homes, or really meeting whatever basic needs you need to do as a family. And yet, since the late 1990s, regional tribal nonprofits have successfully administered TANF. So they have been working to ensure that families across the state receive that level of support. And so building on that success and the existing infrastructure, within our draft, we include a pilot program to allow those same nonprofits to administer SNAP within their service areas. So I want to turn to you, Chief Ridley, because TCC is one of those nonprofits that administers TANF right now. So if you could, please speak to the impacts of food insecurity on children, their families, the young people in your region, and really the strong role that tribal organizations currently play, and could expand on that or build on that through a pilot like this in ensuring that families receive the support that they need.
Thank you, Senator. As you said, it's really two-pronged, the food insecurity issue and the SNAP backlog. I think we've all heard from our tribal members the frustrations with SNAP and the state with applications being delayed by months. The fact that the process isn't really accessible to people in our villages, the problems with our phone lines, long hold times, dropped calls, delayed or lost mail. I know we've talked about the mail system a number of times, lack of coordination with other programs like you mentioned, TANF and many others. It really seems like that whole process could really be improved. The impact are families going hungry while waiting for aid. You know, we've been hearing from our tribal members, and there was one in Fort Yukon, Gwich'aghé, who has said, not enough for even a mouse to get scraps. That's what they said they had in their house while they were waiting for the SNAP application to be processed for months, which is really concerning. Now, TCC and tribes do our best to fill the gaps with food vouchers, outreach events, and one-time $1,500 stipends, but it's just not sustainable. The things that we're trying to do to keep things going. We've also, in our region at TCC, been doing salmon distributions to the tune of about $1 million a year for the past 3 or 4 years to ensure tribal members have salmon in their freezer to get through the winter months, simply because, unfortunately, I think we can no longer depend on the state and federal management to provide fish and game for our people, which is really unfortunate. Tribes already administer federal programs effectively like TANF, LIHEAP, Head Start, and childcare with deep knowledge of our communities. We're a one-stop shop that offers employment, training, health, food, and a lot more. TCC's 477 plan allows us to consolidate grants, removing red tape and improving outcomes for our families. We're already doing the work. What we lack is the authority to manage SNAP directly. We urge direct federal funding for tribes to administer SNAP, and the funding should not be routed through states or agencies that all seem to take their cut through the process. This would honor tribal self-determination and the federal trust responsibility, reduce duplication and administrative burdens, improve access and timeliness of services. This aligns with long-standing federal policy and recent efforts across HHS to streamline funding and improve efficiency. This would significantly reduce administrative burdens for both federal agencies and tribal organizations and empowers us to design programs that fit our needs so that every dollar reaches the community faster, more respectfully, and more efficiently. Alaska Native families should not go hungry while systems fail. Now, overall, when I think of this, I think, just less administrative, burdensome grants. I've been hearing tribes for over a decade talk about that push that seems like that happened, 10 or 15 years ago of constantly having to apply for grants and waiting to see if, you're going to get funded or not. More formula-based, I think, self-governance type funding and letting us manage programs to increase efficiency, saving money, and getting more services out to our people. That's really what we're trying to do. So thank you. Masicho.
Thank you. And one of the things that we have been making sure is that when we have these visiting dignitaries that are coming from Washington, D.C., we can get them out to the villages. It is so important to stop at the store. So with the Secretary of Housing yesterday, it was important to not only price a sheet of plywood, which was $88 a sheet, but it was important for him to look at what people pay for the cost of food, the food that is available out there in a village like Napakiak, to see the sale shelf, which is basically the damaged goods, to see a jar of Crisco that had been split open and was marked half price. But it was, I said, can you really sell this? And the response from the clerk was, if there's somebody who wants to buy it, we will sell it. And to see the stale dated dates on children's rice cereal, to understand that, again, yes, there's a market for it because the price of food is so challenged, and recognizing the food insecurity issues that we see around the state, educating people to the reality is something that's important for all of us. I want to shift gears just a little bit. We'll turn to you, Natasha, but talk about environmental health and the profound impact on children's lives. So under Title V, we address the environmental health recommendations from the report, trying to really focus in on the significant threats that face Native children, including indoor air quality, dust, sanitation issues, contaminated lands. And so under Title V, we seek to enhance healthcare provider training and electronic health records to better track and address environmental health risks that affect Native children, where we hope to build on some of the programs that are already underway in Alaska, like we see at YKHC's Environmental Health Referral Program. This is aimed to address respiratory health disparities through improved air quality. So, Natasha, can you elaborate for the committee the kind of environmental health threats that Alaska Native children are most commonly exposed to, and how these show up in clinical settings, and then how important you feel it is that environmental health be integrated within IHS and the tribal health system specifically?
Thank you, Senator. Alaska Native children are frequently exposed to environmental health threats tied to overcrowded and substandard housing, inadequate plumbing, poor ventilation, and high rates of in-home smoking. These conditions lead to the accumulation of indoor air pollutants, such as smoke from wood stoves, cigarettes, mold, and elevated levels of particulate matter, along with infectious airborne pathogens like RSV, influenza, TB, and COVID. Clinically, this results in high rates of respiratory illness, including pneumonia, bronchitis, asthma, exacerbations, and bronchiolitis. In the YK Delta, infants in overcrowded homes are 2.5 times more likely to be hospitalized for RSV, and 98% of children with upper respiratory illness live in overcrowded conditions. Severe chronic respiratory conditions are strongly associated with the high rates of overcrowding in the YK Delta, where it is 4 times more prevalent than in the rest of the United States, with lifelong complications and extremely expensive treatment costs. Integrating environmental health within the IHS and tribal health systems is essential to controlling respiratory illness. In communities where homes are overcrowded and poorly ventilated, infectious respiratory diseases pass quickly and repeatedly among family members, and chronic respiratory illnesses such as asthma are common. Addressing these environmental drivers of disease requires structural household level interventions. Environmental health staff play a key role in identifying these hazards, mitigating exposure, improving ventilation, recommending home repairs, and distributing tools like the HEPA filtration units. Their work directly supports clinical care by preventing infections before they begin and reducing the severity of illness when they do occur. Our tribal health staff understand these significant disparities in terms of housing and environmental factors, and our frontline staff should be empowered with the tools to help our community members, like in the YK Delta, receive these air filters that have been proven to be a great success. I'd also like to say thank you to you and your staff and Gloria O'Neill for all the work. It's truly inspirational. And all of us at the table have proven tools that have moved the dial, have improved the safety and wellness of our children. And even the Native children in Tanana who stood up over 10 years ago now to express their concerns. They were able to do that because in our region, we empower them to. Every single year, our chiefs are held accountable by their own children, saying what their experiences are. And year after year, we hear more experiences that we are well because of the programs the tribes and the tribal health organizations are implementing. And even Brian himself is a product of those programs. Both him and I were in the same dance group FNA put on, Fairbanks Native Association. Melissa Charlie's in the audience as the current executive director. He was a lot older than me, of course, as a teenager. And I was in elementary, but really knowing who you are and your identity as a young Native person, and those programs being funded are proven to work for our people. And I just like to thank all of you. You're so inspirational to all of our work, and it really allows us, all of us are challenged in our work, and it's so inspirational to hear all the comments. Thank you.
Natasha, thank you for that, and thank you for your leadership at ANTHC. When I think about the good work that comes out, that we see out in some of these very small, very remote villages now, where we're making headway when it comes to clean water, when it comes to sanitation systems, when it comes to how we deal with just dust that everyone is breathing, and how we are able to respond in a way that is more collaborative. It's progress and it's good, but we know that there is much more to be done there. So we've gotten a little bit about the services that are provided by many of you, but I want to step back for a second and focus on how we can approach the delivery of these services in a more holistic way, because that's what everybody's been talking about, is that it can't just be about healthcare. It's housing, it's safety, it's food security, it's environmental. It all is this big umbrella, but how do you deliver these services in a more holistic and an integrated way? The 477 program, Gloria, you educated me about this decades ago, but so critically important to Alaska tribes and tribal organizations, but really providing that more focused and streamlined and flexible approach to delivering employment, training, and related services. And when we allow tribes to consolidate funding from multiple federal programs into a single plan with the unified reporting requirements, we see 477 allowing for more efficient and culturally responsive service delivery, particularly in our more remote areas. We've seen it work. We have seen it work over the years to address the barriers that tribes face when you're trying to add and integrate additional programs into the 477 programs. So what we're looking to do with the legislation is include provisions specifically aimed at resolving some of these challenges and strengthening the program's impact. So Dan, I'm going to turn to you. BBNA has really been a leader in implementing the 477 program. They're continuing to offer a strong example of how effective the model can be in delivering services to children and our families. So can you share some of the successes and the challenges that BBNA has encountered as you have developed and administered its 477 programs?
Thank you, Senator. BBNA has administered a 477 plan for more than 25 years now, and it's been nothing short of transformative as we deliver services to children and families. The greatest strength is the model of flexibility, consolidating funding streams and multiple funding agencies, that we can design services that make sense for our communities rather than forcing people into fragmented one-size-fits-all federal guidelines. In practice, this means families can access work development, childcare, supportive services, and through a single application and coordinated plan, reducing administrative burden and helping them navigate fewer bureaucratic obstacles. We've seen this impact firsthand, and one example we can give you is a single mother with multiple children was able to secure employment that initially applied for work support services and then assist with internet connectivity to her home that was needed for her job. And through a single application and case management, the client also received childcare, transportation, support that allowed her to travel to and from her work site and her children's medical appointments, and guidance to enroll in college courses that she could advance her employment. These combined services helped her maintain self-sufficiency and provide more than just basic needs for her and her children. And it's the power of locally driven integrated solutions. That said, there are still challenges. Even with 477 authority, reporting requirements remain inconsistent across federal partners, and negotiating approvals take far longer than needed. Interagency collaboration remains uneven and does not always help when one federal agency supports integration while another opposes or restrictions or undermines it. Overall, 477 has proven that when tribes are trusted to lead, outcomes improve. Children, families, and entire communities. Our request is simple: continue strengthening the model by streamlining federal oversight, fully aligning agreements with congressional intent, and expanding flexibility that has made 477 successful in Alaska, and protecting the funding to ensure continued success for the children we serve and the families. We find, and I have staff in the room, and Serena and Annie over there, they've combined their actual resources and they've braided funding, and it's been really really inventive in the way they've delivered services. And it's working quite well. And so we thank you for the continued support, and we'll work any way we can with you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think it's solid examples where we have demonstrated the efficiency, demonstrated the value that comes through these 477 agreements. So I appreciate that. Patuk, let's have a discussion about the importance of allowing tribes to lead on issues related to education. It's so important that we have that trust to allow for that leadership. You're the executive director at Arctic Slope Community Foundation, and you've created a somewhat, I'd say it's a unique community design teacher apprenticeship program in partnership with the University of Alaska. We were able to help you out with a little bit of a congressionally directed spending back in FY24. But your program and some others were really the model for what we did in Section 802 in Title 8 of our bill. This would help start and fund similar teacher apprenticeship programs. So can you share a little bit more about Arctic Slopes program, what it's meant within the community, not only for the community, but your teachers, your students, and then what challenges does it help to mitigate?
For sure. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Murkowski, staff, distinguished guests. My name is Paduk Glenn. I'm the Executive Director of the Arctic Slope Community Foundation. Hoyinakpuk, thank you for this opportunity to share our perspective of our Arctic Slope region and what we've been able to accomplish, addressing a very dire need in this state. And so before I talk about the program that we developed, I want to talk a little bit about our biggest challenge for our Alaska Native people, and even more so in rural Alaska. So our biggest challenge in education is that our children continue to face some of the lowest educational outcomes in the United States. Only 30% of our children are proficient in reading by the 4th grade, 13% in math by the 8th grade, and our graduation rates are as low as 53% for our Alaska Native students. These are alarming rates. Now, these numbers don't directly reflect a lack of ability. It's more so the challenges rooted in chronic underfunding, lack of culturally relevant curricula, and extremely high teacher turnover. Now, that last one, high teacher turnover. There is a direct link between high turnover of our teachers and the abilities of our youth in education. Sometimes 30% of our teachers do not come back to teach, and sometimes over half the teachers do not come back to teach. This is crazy. If you were a student in a school and your teachers didn't come back, how would that make you feel? You know, this instability, it disrupts learning, it damages relationships, and it leads to lower academic achievement. Students lose trusted adults, and they're more likely to disengage with school, and it just compounds the problem. Now I want to talk a little bit more about what we need to do to move forward stronger. It's so important to work with our tribal leadership and our local community organizations. That should be at the heart of any federal solution. And federal support should be prioritizing direct funding and technical assistance to tribes and local partners. Now, when it comes to Indigenous educators and apprenticeships, according to research, students thrive when they're taught by educators that share their language and culture. And according to the statistics, less than 5% of Alaska's teachers are Alaska Native, though 25% of our students are Alaska Native. We advocated for a program and we developed an innovative solution as an educator apprenticeship, and it's United States Department of Labor approved. And it's designed for our community members and our Indigenous paraprofessionals to earn while they learn, gain certification without ever having to leave their village unless they wanted to. This model helps reduce barriers, keeps teachers rooted in their communities. So we developed the Tribal Educator Apprenticeship, and it's a national model. We developed it in 2023, and since then we've enrolled 24 apprentices from across the state of Alaska. So it's not just our region, it's other regions as well. Now, our apprenticeship is a little bit different than others because there are others that were developed after ours. Ours specifically has that word tribal in front of it, and it incorporates Inupiaq culture and values, which I think is that little bit of extra spice that it needs in order for this apprenticeship to be successful. Now, we've run into a roadblock though. The demand exceeds the available funding, and we're desperately needing of support to keep this program going and for it to grow. We actually had to turn people away in 2024 due to lack of funding. And I just want to say that this cause is personal to me, and I think it might be for many people in this room because I am a product of rural Alaskan education, as I would imagine many people in this room are. And I struggled. I had to fight tooth and nail to get to where I'm at now. And it was tough. Remedial college classes, shame and embarrassment of knowing that I'm far behind my urban peers. And now that I have children of my own and countless nieces and nephews who are in this system that may have improved a little bit in the last 20 years, but we still have a lot of work to go. And I know that the future of the education system in Alaska depends on meetings like this and the actions that happen thereafter. And so, you know, I've got a lot of hope. I've got a lot of hope. And I've seen the fruits, the early fruits of this program. We work with our apprentices. We go to their communities, and I spoke to the kids in the class that the apprentices are teaching, and I asked them all, what do you want to be when you grow up? And all of them said, teacher, teacher, I want to be a teacher. And there was just one that didn't say teacher, but what did she want to be? She said she wants to be a babysitter, which is kind of like a teacher in some ways. But it's a program that has the potential to transform our state, to transform our communities. And if it continues and it grows and it improves, someday all of the teachers in our communities are from those communities. And that will be when our kids are number one in the United States for success in school. And those kids that are in school now, that is the future of our state. That's who's going to be taking care of us when we're all elders. They're going to be the ones in this room deciding the future of us, right? Well, you know, I hope, right? So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for inviting me here today to speak. Thank you for having this time and space for us to speak out about these things that are all near and dear to our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I can't help but just smile when you related the story of, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up, and to have these kids be able to say teacher, because that means we're maybe turning the corner. When I go into so many of the villages that I visit, and I ask kids what they want to be, there's a great relatability to working in healthcare. Want to be a community health aide. Why? Because they see their mom as a community health aide. They see their auntie. They see family members They see the people from their village that have that job, and they put their uniform on, and they're there to help everybody, and the kids relate to that. But they haven't been able to relate to their teachers because, as you point out, they come and they go. So having that role model in their community and being able to say, I want to be one of those. So thank you for what you're doing with that. So April, I'm going to ask you to speak to a little bit more of the technical side. We've done a lot of heart with these discussions, but one of the things that we learned from the get-go was what we didn't know. We didn't have the data. We didn't have some of the research that we needed. And in order to make good, wise decisions, we need accurate, relevant data to help identify the challenges, measure the success of intervention, because this begets other aspects of support, most notably federal funding. But so often we've seen that it's hard to access the data, it's incomplete, or it's misaligned with tribal priorities. And the way forward, I thought, really did a great job, a full chapter dedicated to research and data, recommending the creation of an office to house all the data on Native people, which is it's a pretty large undertaking. But the draft lays the groundwork for that vision with the goal of building it out in close collaboration with organizations like South Central Foundation and stakeholders nationwide. So can you speak to the importance of Indigenous data sovereignty, kind of what it looks like in practice, and how South Central is approaching data collection as you support your mission?
Janan, Senator Murkowski, for giving me this question. You're right, it's kind of a technical one, and I'll start by saying that I think there's a lot of heart to it too. South Central Foundation is part of the Alaska Tribal Health System, and we are one of the places in the tribal health system where we have a research program. And so the concepts, the thoughts around Indigenous data sovereignty are really important to us and to our board of directors, and I'm happy to share a bit of our thinking about that. So Indigenous data sovereignty, what is it? It's the right to govern the collection, ownership, and use of our own data. We see it as the right of Alaska Native peoples to own, control, access, and possess data that derive from us and which pertain to the members' knowledge systems, customs, and lands. The Alaska Tribal Health System data governance includes data related to cultures, belief systems, traditional healing, health behaviors, healthcare services, along with individual diagnosis, treatments, biological specimens, and our genetic makeup, things that are incredibly important to us. And so that data and how that data is treated becomes incredibly important to us. So what is SCF's approach to Indigenous data sovereignty? SCF supports personal and individual data privacy protections for Alaska Native peoples. SCF also supports Alaska Native peoples' data sovereignty through the development and management of collective data privacy protections, supported via community-controlled data infrastructure, which are essential to ethical Indigenous data practices. We have developed policies and procedures to ensure that data collection occurring with community members and at our health facilities are aligned with Alaska Native values, interests, and priorities. SCF has an Alaska Native Institutional Review Board that exercises the right to decide what data is collected, how that data is collected, and who has the appropriate access to that data after it's been collected. We have a big workforce. We have over 2,800 employees, and all of those employees are part of the security of the data in healthcare. They are part of how we develop and enhance and utilize respectful data governance, data storage, data security, and we are guided by Alaska Native value-based decision-making regarding the data that we are entrusted to protect. Within public health surveillance, SCF health programs determine what data could and should be shared with federal, state, and other partners when evaluating health programs and monitoring population-level health outcomes and behaviors. And we think very carefully about those decisions. When is the right time to share that data? What does it look like after that data is shared? Within our health research program, our board of directors, with the support of the research department, review each proposed research project and review at each phase of the research project life cycle to ensure that Alaska Native data is collected appropriately, that it is protected, that it is secured, and that it is used in a manner that directly benefits Alaska Native people and does not cause harm to people, families, or at the community level. So what does that all mean? Just kind of in conclusion, Indigenous data sovereignty practices and use at SCF have helped increase the trust that community has, in their healthcare providers, in the health programs that are offered to community members, and the trust they have in participating in that research, knowing that we're careful about how that data is collected and tracked makes people more comfortable to participate in those important research studies. We have increased privacy and confidentiality by checking on the use of each identifiable data point in the analysis and in how they are reported. So my final comment is, for me, Indigenous data sovereignty, it allows us to oversee, be part of, and approve how stories about us are created, how they are framed, and how they are told, and to make sure that our data is used in ways that help our communities grow and thrive and protects against data uses that cause harm to people and families. And it's really important to us. And I'll just end by saying, I did get a technical one, but I really appreciate that it's part of this conversation. Shanann.
Well, thank you for that. And it is an important part of the conversation because it goes to the issue of trust. On housing issues, there's a lot of information that is requested when it comes to children that may be introduced to part of the system. There's a lot of information, and it is personal, it is private. And so if you don't trust that there's going to be a level of confidentiality or respect for that data, you are going to be hesitant to contribute. And so I really appreciate the commission highlighting this as an area that we need to focus on. It is certainly becoming more and more a topic of conversation, not just for what we're talking about for purposes of the Children's Commission, but really more broadly. So thank you for that. So we talked, Dan raised the issue of the 477 program mechanism. That's just one way that we can work to bring about a more holistic approach to services that we've been discussing. But another one that has been very important for a long while has been the Tauahi initiative out of the Department of Interior. It plays a critical role in addressing public safety challenges in rural Alaska by supporting our tribes and developing culturally grounded, the wraparound services that help integrate the social services, the tribal courts, the law enforcement, and really designed to help the families reduce incarceration, to improve access to justice in our communities. And AVCP really took the lead in this. They were one of the 6 original pilots for Tauahi. And I think over the last decade, you've really been able to showcase how you have designed services that fit communities' unique needs. You braid the programs, you braid the funding. So, Vivian, this is your moment to talk about how the Tawahi initiative has really helped AVCP, and can you also add the importance of authorizing and expanding mechanisms like we have with Tawahi?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak on Tawahi. Before I start, I would like to really congratulate you and your staff, especially your staff, for putting
The work.
together what I was writing down here. I said this panel is Alaska Native thought leaders for our families and children. So it really speaks to what Alaska has to bring forward as thought leaders as we worry about our children and our families, not just today, but into the future. So this is a really good example of those that you are asking to step forward to speak to the framework in which Alaska really, the tribes in Alaska really will come together and bring the best that we can forward to secure that future for our children. So thank you, and congratulations to the staff for doing this great work. My name is Vivian Corthius. I serve as the Chief Executive Officer for the Association of Village Council Presidents. AVCP has been designated the only Tawahi demonstration project site in Alaska, and we've been doing that for the last 10 years. What I'm going to speak about today is some of the lessons learned and really how and what we've done in the last 10 years, and a little bit about where we see Tawahi going in the future. I have prepared notes here. I timed myself, and it should be pretty close to the time. So from 2005 to 2015, AVCP saw enormous growth in programs and needs and the need for services, but there was no investment in administrative infrastructure due to underfunded administrative costs and heavy grant and program restrictions. By 2015, AVCP had 157 open grant streams, supporting 26 individual programs providing services which were siloed by funding sources. AVCP consists of 48 communities in extreme rural America with approximately 30,000 tribal members. In our region, there was a lack of broadband infrastructure, including reliable fax and phone systems, and only until recently, stable internet services that has been introduced. Before 2015, there was no coordinated AVCP-wide communication system, and most programs had no software system, relying only on Excel spreadsheets with no ability to share information. Due to the lack of support for the administrative structure, AVCP was choked in its ability to provide services effectively. In 2015, AVCP's program staff, administration created the Tawahi proposal. It was a proposal that we submitted. After learning about a new program offered to streamline service delivery through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, AVCP's executive board initiated the quality improvement process in January of 2016, recognizing that quality improvement, programmatic, and fiscal compliance were the key to the success of providing quality services to our customers. AVCP started re-engineering services under the Tawahi initiative, evaluating every aspect of operations and program services. Under Tawahi, AVCP successfully restructured internal programs from 26 departments in 2016 to clustering similar programs into 6 divisions, fostering collaboration and improving service delivery overall. This change took time, and in my opinion, the Tauahi initiative was the catalyst. It was a change catalyst that made the opportunity for AVCP to improve our services to our region. Since the inception of the Tauahi project, AVCP has been working closely with the other 5 pilot demonstration sites to support one another in executing the Tauahi program in ways that each community needs. So we're all different. Even in our region, our tribes are different. But the framework in which we provide those services is what we built under Tauahi. Tauahi allows the tribes and tribal organizations to develop comprehensive plans to enhance service delivery across multiple or all family-centered programming. At AVCP, we not only created our Family Service Center, but we applied the same concept to all of our services. Self-governance compacts under Department of Interior allow tribes and tribal organizations to take over BIA, BIE government services and design the service delivery in a way that fits our tribes and our region's needs. So it's very specific to your own needs as a tribe. Tauahi allows a tribe or a tribal organization to design a fully comprehensive service delivery model, which we have now. And 10 years ago, we really didn't have that. To support our families and children by supporting the necessary infrastructure. Despite its success, Tauahi remains underfunded and needs to be expanded to more tribal communities. In my opinion, it should be expanded to all tribal communities. Increased investment in Tauahi is essential to support more tribes and ensure the program's sustainability. AVCP supports this comprehensive legislation draft that will authorize and expand Tauahi, ensuring it becomes a permanent program with permanent funding. However, Tauahi funding amounts need to be increased to add more demonstration tribes each year and provide additional resources for all tribes under social services and ICWA. The legislative proposal funding amounts should consider the future of all the tribes under Tauahi, so not just now, but in the future. The draft legislation should ensure provisions for additional across-the-board funding for all tribes under social services and ICWA as well as other Tauahi programs. The formation of a Tauahi Leadership Council under the direction of the Secretary is essential to carry this great work forward. AVCP anticipates and appreciates the main point of this legislative package as it relates to the Tauahi program, which supports the efficiency of the current federal administration. That's the current federal administration. There is a high trust responsibility that Tauahi fulfills this by allowing for the autonomy of tribes to function efficiently and enabling agencies to streamline their services. Tauahi reflects the true intention of Indian self-determination, which is to provide self-governance and self-determination for tribes. The legislative language discusses different methods to streamline federal funding so that tribes have the flexibility to do the work locally in our communities. This is important and should be emphasized as this proposal draft progresses. In conclusion, the Tauahi program is a proven model that empowers Native families and strengthens tribal communities. AVCP stands in support of the intent of this comprehensive package and will continue to work with you, Senator, and your staff to recommend key areas that may be needed or modifications so that this package will find success as it moves forward towards finalization. We look forward to working in partnership to see this legislation through to its final form. Thank you again for the invitation to speak. And I wrote something down here that some of the Tawahi tribes are starting to adopt. And I actually heard it from the TCC region when I was at a fish meeting. And I wrote it down here. It says, where tribes lead, children and families thrive. So I really appreciate me stealing from someone in the TCC region that I really thought was important. The last thing I want to share, Senator, is the 22, on behalf of the 22 Tawahi demonstration and incubator tribes, we wrote a letter of support. I signed it, and I just wanted to hand it to you. Thank you.
Vivian, thank you for that. And again, as we're looking to build on this draft, it's the examples of programs like Tawahi that have been implemented here, AVCP's leadership in that. So you not only can provide these lessons learned, but good solid suggestions for how we build on that. So thank you for that, because it's this level of empowerment, the innovative solutions that we're looking for that again are going to help us support our healthy families and communities throughout the state. Vivian, I also want to thank you for the letter of support on behalf of the 22 demonstration and incubator tribes. And I want to turn to you, Ben, as president of AFN, and thank you for AFN's statement of support. I know that we can count on you and those within AFN to be part of this discussion going forward. AFN has long been a leader on child welfare issues, working with so many of the key organizations nationwide, advocating for policies that protect the well-being of Alaska Native children. It's policy work, the convening, the partnerships that go on has really helped to elevate the importance of culturally appropriate, community-driven solutions to keep Native children connected. So in our first Title I on child welfare, the proposed legislation incorporates some recommendations to strengthen federal policies and address the persistent disparities affecting Alaska Native children. So I would ask you to speak to some of the challenges that communities across Alaska are facing in the child welfare system, and how some of the provisions in this draft can help address those issues.
Gunakchish Murkowski, and let me start by just thanking you for all of your hard work on this bill. Your leadership in this bill is not only this, it's also VAWA, it's also Advanced Act, not Invisible Act. I just want to thank you for leadership on that. I do remember being in a room with you in Huddy High Camp on this Advanced Act. And also, I might be biased here, you do have the best team in Congress.
Thank you.
So, good excuse for that. And also Anna Powers, she's just a force, and I wish she was here. But I want to thank you for your leadership, your commitment to our state, to our children and communities, and for your staff. Your leadership is shown in their leadership and commitment to our state. So, good excuse for that. I don't know what else to say in this room besides ditto. And I say ditto because as my team is putting together that statement on this bill, we went through our resolutions to figure out, what resolution matched up with each section, and we found dozens for each section. Everything from housing, everything from teacher attainment to our student low stats in terms of schools, to violence against women, to Tiwahi, and then to everything. So we can actually put a number to resolutions for each section. And this goes to the ditto because as we go through section 1, your very first section in your bill, it goes to resources. when you hear Patuk, when you hear Vivian, when you hear Natasha, when you hear April, Dr. Tina Woods, Jackie, there's a will. Our tribes know how to do this stuff. We will always do this stuff, but the biggest barrier is resources. So Section 1 looks at resources specifically for our communities. It looks at, how you can, have a set aside in the Social Security Act, how increase that set aside, amends providing direct funding to a social service block grant. Section 102 talks about legislation from the House side on additional set asides, and then Section 104 is 5% set aside in CAPTA. Also in the bill was, Section 203 for the Denali Commission, a very, very amazing opportunity for our state that actually has our the exec director, federal culture in the room, Judy Kitka, who's a former president of AFN, my long-term mentor, who actually made her keynote speech last year's convention, which was actually framed after this bill, after this commission report, about a letter to her grandchildren. So I want to recognize Judy Kitka in the room for her leadership in this as well. And Gloria O'Neill was for this report, because we did actually kind of set last year's convention theme, Our Children, Our Future Ancestors, on this commission report and a way forward. So good excuse with that. I'm going to keep my statement short. Again, we heard it here in the room, ditto. The biggest resource we have is resources. And as example that Natasha said, she was in the same dance group as Chief Ridley. In this room, I have the honor of being at the table with the same dance group that taught me how to dance, Jackie Pata, at Culture Camp, Luquan. So when our children, when our tribes, our communities are in charge of our education, they lead our communities, you have that record, you have that stance, and we could do it. Again, the biggest barrier is resources. So the very first section of the bill is all about resources and how you can make sure that our communities, our health system, our tribal organizations, tribes, or ANCs could have that opportunity to do what we need to do best for our community. So good excuse for that, good excuse for this bill, and I'm really putting not only the language in there, the programmatic things we need to do, but also the resources to do it. AFN does have a grant to look at best practices for ICWA. When we look at this program, it's a 5-year program. We could have the best practices possible, but we don't have the money or the resources to do it. It makes it harder for communities, but we will still do it. You can't stop Jackie or Gloria. So with that said, also a note, with Natasha saying that she might be slightly younger than Brian, I'm still slightly younger than Natasha. So, so with the dancing. So I'm going to say ditto to everything here at the table. Also recognize we do have some AFN board members here, Vivian, Brian, Gail in the room, and also Jackie's alternate for AFN. So really, this bill, your staff, and your commitment to resources and the programmatic changes in this bill is incredible. And Ganesh for your leadership.
Ganesh, Ben, and I appreciate your leadership there at AFN in so many different ways. I've got one last issue, and Tammy, you weighed in on the issue of domestic violence and as it relates to housing. But when we think about the impacts on families, when we see domestic violence in the household, just disrupts the stability, it harms children's well-being, these cycles of trauma that we have discussed, and how you break that cycle. It's just recognized that it comes through the culturally supportive and appropriate services. It comes with the stability that housing provides. It comes with, as Ben points out, the resources, and not just the grants. And when you say you have 157 different grants that you're trying to manage with the timing of all this, that is not sustainable either. And so what we include in our draft are provisions to authorize some key programs to support Alaska Native survivors of domestic violence. We also codify the Alaska Native Victim Services Program that is currently administered by Denali Commission. So Tammy, if you can just help us wrap here today by speaking to the importance of securing statutory authorizations for the programs and what that really means. Why is it important for the long-term support of our survivors? Go ahead and hit that button. Yeah.
It's a it's a big question. And I think that some of the language that's in the section 202 and 203 is talking about that whole idea of statutorily authorizing legislation that gives us the opportunity to actually do the things we need to do here at home. Really, what it does is it helps us to, we keep repeating that families have the right to live violence-free, to have food in their cupboards, it made me almost want to cry about the idea that somebody has less than crumbs in their home to feed their children. They have access to health care, as every American should. They have access to a house that they don't have to scrub the mold off every morning when they are, and I've seen those houses, and that we have the access to work if we want to, in order to survive and to, give the opportunity to our families. I think the issue, though, and the gaps that we continue to fight against can be changed in a way that isn't going to impact other communities in a negative way. And I think that that's always the struggle that we find ourselves in with Alaska Native or American Indian communities, is that we want this, and it means that we're going to take from that. But that's not the case. We're doing so much already with so little that it doesn't amount to peanuts, really. And it's not a luxury to want those things. It is not a luxury. It should be our right living in this free country, correct? And I think that when we talk about the idea of being creative with services, now the Family Violence Prevention Services Act does have the opportunity for resource centers, which we do actually act as the Alaska Native Tribal Resource Center under that Services Act. It has a little word in that statute that hasn't been reauthorized for a really long time that gives us, we're only appropriated, basically. And so what it does is, for us and the Native Hawaiian Resource Center at this point, or any other state resource center, is it changes the word that we go into statute like the other resource centers. And what that does is then gives the opportunity for it to bring Alaska-specific technical assistance and training to the tribes and the tribal programs that are giving services to victims of domestic violence and a lot of the other intersections and services that are needed in that realm, because it's big. It's not just about domestic violence. It's about justice. It's about housing. It's about food. It's about just being able to walk in the door and be safe. That's a basic human right. So it's a word, it's one word. And I know that seems, but it's a big word. It's a must or a shall or whatever. But the other thing that I think that's really important that we need to emphasize, and it's been talked about here, is the Denali Commission's role in being able to be the conduit for those service funds, because that gives the opportunity, because they understand Alaska, they understand the needs in Alaska. And I think that an advisory group of the people like us at the table and tribes to help guide that is a really, really effective and a proactive way to make some real changes as to those resources that we're talking about. Because every one of the resources we talked about today, even though they may seem diverse, comes down to the basic things: safety, breaking the cycles, breaking trauma that continues to impact our families and our communities to the degree that our families and communities are not thriving when they could. We've seen it happen, we know it can, and we know how to do it. Let us. And this is what that is. I've written it all out, so there's much more information in that, and I shortened it a lot, but I think that we're on the right track. We have the right ideas. Let us do it. Give us the authority to make those decisions, and let us do it.
It's called self-determination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. there's a few more questions that I had hoped to get out on the record. I'm going to be respectful of everybody's time here. But Jackie, I wanted to hear your input on the Federal Tribal Advisory Committees. April, I was going to ask you another question about some of the health disparities that we face. And Tammy, you've mentioned that you have more background that you would like to share with us. And so I'm going to ask, I know you've prepared for him because everybody has been more than amply prepared to contribute, but share with us for the record not only your comments in these areas, but as you have listened to one another, if you have other thoughts that you might care to add to it. I think this is really what we're seeking to do from this engagement. But when you think about the common themes, you know, it is self-determination. I've been writing down a few of the things that I've heard over and over. A need for flexibility, how we move towards greater empowerment. You can't do anything unless you feel safe, and the focus on safety, how we break the cycles of trauma. The fact that when we are talking about how we deliver these services in a more holistic way, whether it's 477 or what we have seen with Tawahi, that there is no wrong door, right? There's nothing that is going to deter anybody more than if you're told, sorry, we don't do that in this office. Go find whoever else does it. You know, maybe they get lucky and they find the right door. But how we are there, it's part of what we're seeking to do with this approach. So, and the real underlying thing is that the communities know best. The people in your regions, those that you serve, it is our communities that have been holding them up, and it is they who really know themselves best, and know that we're taking this information and we are exporting it to Washington, D.C. I don't want the genuine heart that we have heard here be lost in that translation when we go 4,000 miles to the east. But know that what you have shared and how you have shared it, it encourages us to do the work. And there's going to be a lot of work that is involved, but we've got a really good foundation. This report, Gloria, I will tell you, gave us such good footing to build on. But we're going to need to keep working on this, not only with you as leaders in your respective areas, but those in the room, those that are watching online. And I wrote a note to myself. I introduced everyone on my SKIA team behind me, as well as Cassidy and the personal office. And sitting right front and center is Sam Haraska. And Sam has been on the SKIA committee now with me for almost a full year and has been an extraordinary addition to the team. He's sitting on that side, but he is equally important to the women here behind me. So I didn't want to forget you there, Sam. But Gloria, I'm going to let you have the last word here, because what you have done through your leadership on the commission, you truly honored the legacy of Alyce Spotted Bear, the legacy of Walter Soboleff, the namesakes of this very important work, with the quality of the work that you did, and now the charge that you have given to us with implementation. So we're very grateful for your work, your leadership on that, and I would turn it over to you for any final thoughts and comments.
Wow. I like I said when we opened, this was transformative. in my life and in my work. And to be able to travel the country and visit our tribal communities and see our people and listen to our people, I just came away with so much hope. And I heard the word hope. And I know we have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but just listening to all of you today makes me so proud. It makes me proud that I get to work in this community. Makes me so proud that there's so many smart people around me who love our people and who are working on the advancement of our people. And as my former chair, Claire Swan, who recently passed at the ripe age of 93, she left a lot of her teachings with me. But one of the things that she said is that there's a Denina word. I might not say it appropriately, Angeline, but it's suku. And what it means is we are one. We are one when we are together. We are one when we are together. And so I just really appreciate being in this journey with all of you, and know that Cook Inlet Tribal Council just stands here ready to support all of us in this work together. And Senator, whatever you need from us, you and your staff, we're here. We're here behind you. We are here behind you. And we couldn't be more proud of your leadership, not only in this, but your ability to listen to your heart and to do what's right. And so thank you. Thank you for moving this forward. And, we've heard it of your staff, but I do think what Ben said was right. They're number one. They're number one together, and they are focused on this. So just let us know what you need and we'll be moving forward. Thank you.
Well, we're all moving together. Soku, is that right, Angelina?
That's about right.
Okay.
Eric might have a little different.
We'll try, but it is a beautiful word to keep with us. And the other phrase that I heard and wrote down first was culture is our medicine. And so much of this comes back to the extraordinary beauty and the richness of the culture of the Alaska Native peoples throughout our state. We're blessed in many, many ways, and our blessings will continue to uplift us through difficult and challenging work, but work that is well worth doing. So thank you to all those of you who participated. I know that you get to share this story, but I know that you all had teams behind you, just as I have teams behind me, that make sure that the words that you've communicated were the ones that were needed here. So please convey our appreciation to them as well, because we're all going to be working on this together. So Gunush Chish, Shanann, Mas Choi, Koinokpuk. Did I miss anything? Say again. Go ahead. Okay. I'm all over it. I'm all over it. In other words, thank you. Thank you all. And with that, the roundtable is adjourned.